not the least of which this indictment of Paul Manafort and others. Nothing to do with the president. Nothing to do with his campaign. Nothing to do with his campaign activity. Nothing. And yet we have crimes we know that have been committed. We know there was collusion with Fusion GPS and Hillary's campaign. Hillary's campaign and the DNC paid for it. And apparently Obama contributed. And then, of course, Uranium One. They knew in 2009 of bribery, extortion, money laundering, kickbacks, and all sorts of other racketeering. And Mueller knew. And let's see who else. Oh, Eric Holder knew. Maybe the president knew through the presidential daily briefings. And still, Vladimir was able, through his agents, to infiltrate and successfully take over 20% of America's uranium market, which, of course, means that America's national security was compromised. And I didn't even mention the increased speaking fees for Bill Clinton, the sign-off of Eric Holder and Hillary Clinton, and the $145 million kickback to the Clinton Foundation. That's collusion. That's trouble. That's a crime. Now, the big question we have this day is there equal justice under the law? Joining us now, Jay Sekulow, Chief Counsel, American Center for Law and Justice, Counsel to the President, and also Victoria Tunsing of DeGeneva Tunsing, who is herself now representing the FBI informant as it relates to the Uranium One case. Sarah Carter has been at the forefront of breaking all of these investigative reports about real collusion and real wrongdoing and compromising national security. Welcome, all of you. Jay Sekulow, I'll throw it to you. Your thoughts on this Manafort indictment and what it says and doesn't say. I actually agree with Alan Dershowitz. This is all designed on a separate issue to get Paul Manafort to say something about the president.
Well, let me say what it does. Okay, so this is not any great shock that Paul Manafort was a subject of an indictment. We've been expecting this for 2 or 3 months now. Remember, they had that pre-dawn. So it's not surprising there that they did it. What is interesting, I think what's important for my client, for the president, is that the indictment itself is based on activities, events that are not related to the campaign and are not involving campaign activity. In fact, it goes back to 2006, involving, these are serious charges, obviously, when you're talking about money laundering, failure to register, tax crimes, but none of these are involving campaign or campaign activities. If they're trying to, quote, put pressure on Paul Manafort, I'm sure they've been trying to do that while. That's just the nature of the way prosecutors work. They ended up now making an indictment, but I'm not concerned about where that goes, Sean. Again, Paul Manafort's engagement with the campaign, for that about 3 months that he was engaged, he did his job. We don't know of anything that was done inappropriately by him as it relates to the campaign. I can't speak to his businesses or his business activity, and that's it. And on the George Papadopoulos guilty plea there, what I'm trying to point out to some media here is that you notice what they didn't charge. The fact that he was having a meeting with someone from Russia, a professor, that wasn't what they charged him with as violating a law, because it did not. What they charged him with, as far as the legal violation,
lying to the FBI,
was lying to the FBI agent. And that, of course, is 18 U.S.C. 1001. Victoria certainly can speak to that. She knows the area, has defended those cases and brought those cases. And that's a whole different ballgame. You don't go into an agent lying.
Victoria, let me go to you because you're representing the FBI informant. And you're watching all of this unfold here, and you know what your client has in terms of evidence. And Sarah and others have broken the story about bribery, extortion, money laundering, racketeering, etc. And you think of what they're doing here. We have evidence between Fusion GPS and Uranium One that, to me, seems like real significant Russia collusion with the Hillary Clinton campaign. That's not even being investigated fully. There's no special prosecutor on that.
Sean, Bill Clinton met with Putin, and he asked to meet with people in the energy field, the nuclear energy field, when he was in Russia getting his $500,000 in his back pocket. Now, interesting about this Papadopoulos charging instrument. I think he's pleaded guilty. It's not an indictment. It's a complaint. But in it, I'm going to say George because I can't say that long name real well.
Papadopoulos. We got Papadopoulos. Yeah.
I can say it once, but I'm not going to keep repeating it. George was banging on the campaign. Hey, I got this deal. He kept sending emails. Did the campaign say yes, let's do it? No, the campaign ignored him. He was a side guy. He was, after his initial being put on this committee, he was really somebody that wasn't part of anything in the campaign. He was a bystander. But if there was a collusion going on, why is he trying to get people to have a meeting? Why is he having to keep saying, hey, I got this, I got that? and the campaign never gets back to him.
That's so well said.
Right.
Sarah, let's get your take overall on all of this, especially in light of all the investigative reporting you've done about real, clear, actual crimes committed, which I actually now believe are all going to come out in the near future.
Yeah, with Victoria and Jay both, I have to say they brought up such important points. And Victoria brought up a point here. I mean, even though George Papadopoulos was, pushing out these emails, nobody from the campaign apparently bit or took the hook on them. And he basically, I mean, if you're looking at the criminal complaint, it was about lying to the FBI. It wasn't because he met with this guy. But if you look at Fusion GPS, Sean, if you look at those connections with Fusion GPS and the fact that the DNC and the Hillary campaign had money going in to the attorneys through Fusion GPS, paying Christopher Steele then, in effect, allegedly paying the Russians, the FSB agents, for information on Donald Trump, which was, by and large part, according to everyone that I've spoken to, disinformation. There is a direct line right there. And I think that there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. The first and foremost, and I don't know if Jay agrees with me on this or Victoria, but is what did the FBI know? What type of evidence did the FBI lay out to get these FISA warrants, to continue these investigations? Was it this dossier? And by the way, the meeting with Don Jr. with Natalia Veselnitskaya, who, by the way, was connected to Fusion GPS, which was lobbying on behalf of the Russian government. I mean, those are very serious issues. And I think if you connect the dots here, I mean, it looks like the Russians...
Well, let's talk legally then about that. If in fact the phony Russian dossier paid for by Hillary, the DNC, and now maybe even Obama contributed, and that was what was used for any type of warrant, Jay Sekulow, would any of that be admissible?
Well, it's the fruit of the poisonous tree. I mean, if the basis upon which a FISA warrant was obtained was not evidence that would either be admissible or wasn't valid, it raises a very serious legal issue as to then the result of that warrant. So when they went in and got the FISA warrant, and if it was based on that dossier, which proves to be not only salacious and unverified, but now a political opposition research, I think the FBI is in a very difficult position, which means the Department of Justice defending it's going to have a tough time.
I mean, you look at the accusations in it, as somebody said, it read like a third grade tawdry novel.
Yep.
How could they look at something like this and think it was even serious? And I never heard of the FBI paying someone else to do their investigation. I've heard of the FBI paying people for information, but not to go out and be the investigator. I mean, they're the premier investigators. Sean, I want to point out one thing, if I may, and that's a footnote in George's complaint. And it says when George was banging on people to meet with them, and one of the people in the campaign that he sent the email to sent an email on to somebody else higher up and said, and not back to George, let's discuss. We need someone to communicate that DT is not doing these trips, meaning Donald Trump. It should be someone low level in the campaign so as not to send any signal. So I disagree with Alan Dershowitz on this basis. I don't think there's any more dominoes.
You think this is basically it? What about General Flynn?
Well, but that's not even in this.
That's true. It has nothing to. By the way, is this investigative creep because it's supposed to be about Trump-Russia collusion and has nothing to do with it?
I don't think that there's anything here to do with it, and I think that it was investigation creep, and I think that as soon as they start investigating the other side of things, we're going to see a lot more connection, possibly regarding the DNC, the Hillary Clinton campaign, Fusion GPS, but the FBI...
Is it going to be Mueller, and how could it possibly be Mueller if Mueller was the FBI director when they had all this evidence of bribery, extortion, money laundering, etc.? I mean, that would seem like a major...
It cannot be Mueller.
It cannot be. I would argue. I agree with you. All right, quick break. We'll come back. 800-941-SEAN, toll-free telephone number. Sarah Carter, Jay Sekulow, Victoria Tunsing. We'll have full coverage of this. Probably one of the most important monologues I'm doing tonight for the history of this country. 9 Eastern on Fox. All right, as we continue, Jay Sekulow and Sarah Carter, Victoria Tunsing, all with us. Jay, where is this now headed as you read the 31-page complaint indictment, as you look at the media now spinning this as if somehow this proves Trump-Russia collusion when it has nothing to do with it? Where does this go from here?
Well, it points out two things. One is you look at the main indictment that's come down today against Paul Manafort, and there's, as I said, not only is there no evidence or allegation of collusion, the indictment has nothing to do with the campaign or campaign activity. Nothing. I mean, it's money laundering on deals from a decade ago, and then up through, I guess, until he stopped doing them. So that it's completely irrelevant. And then if you look at the Papadopoulos plea, you notice what's not charged as a crime. The meeting he was allegedly going to have with some professor that was in Russia to get information, which again, opposition research as it's called now. And the fact is, he's not charged with doing that because that's not a crime. It was the lying to the FBI agent. I think this proves the point that this is moving forward expeditiously, and I am optimistic that we get this wrapped up as to the president, because I think you saw one of the major player, probably the major target of this whole thing, with Paul Manafort. You saw the indictment today, and there's no allegations regarding the campaign or the president.
Your take, Victoria.
In fact, the most recent date of any of the money transfers that is listed in the indictment is 2014. I mean, 2 years before he even started working with the campaign. So, and what they cleverly did is that they extended the date into 2016, 2017, because Manafort kept lying on documents that he was signing at the time. But all of the transfers were completed in 2014. So it had nothing whatsoever to do with the Trump campaign or Russia.
Sarah, let's go to Uranium One and its future, and Fusion GPS and its future. In light, if this is all they've got here, if we have equal justice under the law, doesn't that mean all of the evidence that you have been uncovering now becomes front and center?
Yeah, I think so, Sean. And I think what needs to happen, and this is according to a number of sources that I've spoken with, it needs to move forward with either a special counsel investigation, and it needs to be outside of the purview of Mueller and Rosenstein. So those are the two big issues right there, and also answers. I mean, I know that the Senate Judiciary Committee wants answers, and it goes straight to the informant, right? This former FBI informant, it has information that he needs to deliver to the Hill and to the Senate, and that information must be allowed to be made public, and people have to know what happened so that the tools of justice can be used equally. I mean, if you're looking at Trump and you're following this rabbit hole and this expansive special counsel, then the same applies when you're looking at the Uranium One deal, the passage of the CFIUS, all of the events that took place with this former FBI confidential informant. And I think Victoria would agree with me on that.
All right, Victoria, last word. We got to go.
Well, I think the real Russian investigation is yet to occur. It will not include Trump people.
Wow, that's a powerful statement, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. And the media may have a short moment here, but this is not what they thought they were getting, and it's not what we were told, and what we were told the investigation was even about. Thank you both.